When making beer, there are all kinds of things you can do to make it look great. Making clear beer is one way, and a really kick-ass packaging is another. So today we're going to take a stab at discussing making your own beer labels with graphic designer Kory Lazar. He's going to talk about the types of graphic software that you can use and style tips to make great beer labels today on Homebrewing DIY. Have you ever wanted to make a podcast? Do you have a subject you want to discuss with listeners? Do you even know where to start? Well, if you want to make a podcast and you want to get started now, I could not recommend Anchor enough. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. And you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hey, look, I shopped around for a place to post my podcast, and Anchor was the easiest, most streamlined experience you could ask for. So if you're looking for a place for your new podcast, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And welcome back to Homebrewing DIY, the show that takes on the do-it-yourself aspect of homebrewing. Gadgets, contraptions, parts, this podcast covers it all. On today's show, we're going to talk to Kory Lazar. He's a great graphic designer in Phoenix, Arizona, and he's an up-and-coming homebrewer that makes some of the coolest beer labels that I've seen in the wild. Today, we'll discuss how you can do with very little and make a professional-looking label for your homebrew. First thing, I would like to repeat my call for homebrew hacks. We're doing a really cool show where we will discuss all of the great tips and tricks that our listeners have sent in to make their brew day easier. We already have a ton of great ones and would love to still hear more. You can email your homebrew hacks to podcast@homebrewingdiy.beer. Add the subject line homebrew hacks and we could read them on the show for our last show of the year. The last date to get your hack in is December 9th, so get them in. And if you have a really cool hack, the top 5 that we like are going to get a nice little gift from Homebrewing DIY. Not really sure what it is yet, but it should be something pretty cool. I have another small announcement to make, and that's that we're not going to drop a show next week. It's going to be Thanksgiving, and we're going to take a break and spend the time with our family. So, see you back in 2 weeks. Now I have a little bit of feedback from Kenny Raymond from the mailbag. Kenny says, "Hey, I was wondering if you know where I can get a walkthrough or a parts list or an install guide of the craft beer pie. I love your podcast and everything you talk about. I listen to all of them in a day. I couldn't get enough. Keep up the good work. I'm also looking forward to attending one of the Homebrew Club meetings for the Old Town Mash Paddlers. I live in Brighton, Colorado, and have been looking for a club just like this. Thanks again." Thanks, Kenny, for the kind email. I am glad you're all caught up. As far as the craft beer pie, I agree. We need to do a very focused show on that topic, and I've even recorded one with David Osachi. Remember we talked with him about the eye spindle? Well, I had an issue when I was upgrading my laptop to the Mac OS Catalina, and it broke my recording software, and it happened to break that the day I was recording with David. The audio is completely unusable. So, I've just been trying to reschedule with David, and between kids, life, and his travels, we just haven't been able to sync it up again. But that being said, you will see an episode on the craft beer pie very soon. So just keep listening. It'll be out soon. Now, as far as coming to a club meeting, we'd love to have you. Head on over to OTMP, that's OTMP for Old Town Mash Paddlers, otmp.club, and get some info of when we meet and we'd love to have you. We're a really great club, and I think we're a bunch of nice guys, so we'd love to have you, Kenny. Once again, thanks for the feedback. And if you have any feedback and you're listening, you can always send it to podcast@homebrewingdiy.beer. Once again, that email is podcast@homebrewingdiy.beer. I also have an update from last week's show where we talked to George Duncan about using amylase to try to convert rice to fermentable sugars. That was just a part of the show, and we had that discussion. Well, right after we spoke, he did another project using a different amylase compound and was able to get it to convert. I'm actually going to add a link to the video that he did to update that, and it will be in the show notes after this, so check it out. Please support the podcast by heading over to patreon.com/homebrewingdiy. Your support of any amount will help keep this show on the air and helps this show keep coming to you for free every week. If you support us with even a $1 level or higher, you gain access to a special RSS feed with an ad-free episode and bonus contents. So head over to patreon.com/homebrewingdiy and support us today. Another way you can support the show is to go to podchaser.com, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts and review the show. Your 5-star review is going to help others find this show. The last way you can support us is to go to our website, homebrewingdiy.beer, and click on the sponsor banners on the side of the website. You can try Brewfather for free or shop at Adventures in Homebrewing and support the show. Now, let's get on with today's show, and we're going to talk to Kory Lazar about making your own beer labels on Homebrewing DIY. Hi, I'm here with Kory Lazar from Phoenix, Arizona, and he's decided to join Homebrewing DIY today to talk about really all things to do with DIY homebrew labels. So, Kory, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're actually pretty new to homebrewing, so why don't you give me a bit of your history?
Right, so I'm been brewing for almost a year now. I'm like 3 days away from that year anniversary. It all started with my girlfriend's mother last Christmas bought me a Mr. Beer home brewing kit, and so for probably about 4 or 5 of my batches now have been through the Mr. Beer keg. So, and then I'm a big porter and stout fan, so that's what I really enjoy doing. All my friends are IPA fans, so the last 2 brews I've been doing, I did a Back to the Future themed IPA called Back to the IPA, and then the one that's in process of fermenting right now is an Imperial IPA.
That's awesome. And you started with that Mr. Beer, and you've probably moved to extract, because was it a Mr. Beer with hop pellets in it, or was it like a hopped extract on your first batch?
My first batch was with hop pellets.
Okay. Yeah, my first batch was actually a Cooper's can, and the extract itself already had the hops added to it. So even crappier than Mr. Beer.
Well, Cooper's is Mr. Beer now.
Yeah, so I guess they are kind of the same thing, aren't they? Yeah. But yeah, so and then now you've moved to all grain brewing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are you brewing a bag, 3 vessel? What's your current system look like?
In a bag.
Nice. I brew in a bag too. I'm a big fan of it. And then and so like the IPA you just did was all grain?
This one was with extract. This one I did use extract.
Awesome. And the Imperial one, you use extract to kind of bump up the gravity?
Yeah, to bump up the gravity. We're looking. Hopefully, we're going for me and my buddy. He kind of brought this idea to me. We're trying to get it to about 13% right now. So.
Yeah, that's going to be a big boy. At that point, you've got a hoppy barley wine.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm only 2% off. So
yeah, one of the things we'll see how it goes, but one of those things when you get that high and you've got hoppy and sweetness, I'm curious to see how that's actually going to come out, right? So, Yeah, so really why we brought you on the show is you have I actually saw you on Instagram, and I saw actually some of your beer labels and how amazing they were. Like
I
my beer
appreciate that.
labels, I'm not a big don't get me wrong, I've made a beer label here and there. I'm not the best graphic designer out there. But for me, it's like when I saw yours looked very, very professional, top notch. So, what made you decide to start making your own beer labels? And, how did you start?
It all originally started when I made the first batch I ever made was an Oktoberfest. In the middle of January, made an Oktoberfest. Um, and I'm sitting there going, well, if I want to give this for my friends and my family to have, I'm a graphic designer by trade. And if I just gave them an empty bottle, they would look at it and just be like, wait, what's this? Well, it's beer. Drink it. No, but I'm kind of that to the perfectionist kind of. If I'm going to give somebody something, I want packaging, labeling, all that kind of stuff. Um, I give some of my batches away for birthday gifts, and I give them the 6-pack holders that are customized to my brews and everything as well.
And then when you you give them away as gifts, and when they have a label, they just look great. And I don't know, people just feel like beer should come that way, right?
I think they look at it. It might be some mental trick that your brain does on you, but a lot of people that I've talked to and met, they're like, "Oh, it's homebrewing. I've had homebrew beer before," and they'll taste if it does. Like I have another friend that homebrews, and some of his stuff isn't the best, but he always tries mine, and he's like, "I don't know. I think it's the label. I think it makes it taste better."
Yeah, it's not the label.
It's not the label. Exactly.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But when we talk about the, I do think there is a bit of an aspect to it. When things look great, we see it with our eyes. That does automatically. I a bit of history of me. I come from my background in history of my career. I spent 11 years of my first working years working in the restaurant and bar business. And I can tell you, I worked in some very high end restaurants, and in those restaurants, you ate with your eyes as much as you ate with actually the ingredients that were on the plate. And I think the beer's kind of the same way. For me, I have a kegging system. You pull a pint off my keg, and it's crystal clear. That immediately makes people think that beer is going to taste better. And
I agree.
And when you have a bottle, and it's a bottle conditioned beer, I'm sure, and when it comes out and you hand it to somebody and it looks really professional and it looks like you've taken the care to actually package it well, I think that goes into when they make that first taste, they also are going to be a lot more open to it being a homebrew beer.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and like you, the first 15 years of my career, I was chefs. I went to culinary school, got my degree in culinary arts. So I think a lot of that comes over, like you said, into the beer brewing process,
Hey,
and
beer's cooking, man.
and also with the label because yeah, you want to look at something and it's if it looks enticing, you're going to try it. You may not
Yeah,
like it, but you're going to try it. Your
absolutely.
eyes are going to eat first.
Absolutely. Eyes eat first. And I actually learned that in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we talk about like what it takes to actually do a great beer label. Let's start with, like, let's say I'm a brand new home brewer. This is my first or second batch. I've I want to actually make my bottles look good. I want to do something really nice. Or maybe I've brewed for 10 years and I've never actually really done anything with my bottles. Maybe I just like put a sticker on them or something, and that's how I mark my labels, and I want to get into it. If I had nothing, how would you recommend I get started?
Well, first off, don't jump into all the expensive programs out there. Adobe, it's great. That's what I use personally. I use Photoshop and Illustrator, combine them both. But that's an expensive software. Oh, I want to start building a label and I'm going to just jump into it. There's free software out there. One of the best out there is GIMP. It is almost as close as Photoshop. It can't do everything that Photoshop can, but it's a great starter out there for anybody that wants to learn this type of software, because it's not something that you could just jump into and think, okay, I'm going to create a beer label. And I have no artistic creative background. I'm going to try this new software and I'm going to know it right off the bat. There's a lot. I mean, even with GIMP, it's free, but there's a lot of tutorials out there for the beginner to intermediate to learn how to use it. And it's a great little piece of software. Later on down the line, once you start understanding all the programs like that, then I would always recommend going to the Adobe platform. They're just the best out there.
Yeah, and then if I were going to start with, let's say I'm going to start with GIMP, and I were looking for tutorials, what are the best places to look for those tutorials? I mean, obviously go to Google and type it in, but
Yeah,
is it going to
Google is
be?
great.
Yeah, but is it going to be like, is it better to watch a video? Is it better to read a blog? What do you think is the best way to learn?
It all depends on how that person learns the best. I'm very hands on, so I'll have um, when I was learning tutorials and everything, I'd have a video on one screen, I'd have it open on my other screen in whatever program I was using, and doing it as they were doing it on the other screen. Um, when it comes to Google searching, I mean, blogs are great. Um, to learn. I've learned a lot of techniques just in graphic design from blogs that I'm like, I wonder how they really did that, because I can't figure that out. Go find a blog and, oh, never even thought of that. So, um, video tutorials are great as well, because you can pause it and play around with things, and then go back to continuing the tutorial on it. So there's a lot of good information on Google right now that you can
Yeah,
get great tutorials.
absolutely. And really, if you were to move into doing a beer label, I know that things are different sizes. What is the standard like size for a beer label?
There's a couple. You have your Volo design, and that's usually what I use, which is it's a uh, landscape design that's 4 inches by 4 inches long by 3 inches tall. And then you have vertical volo, which is the same dimensions, but it's just now going to be a taller label than actually almost wrapping around the bottle. Those are the two main ones that I use. There's all different. You mean there's ovals that are usually about the same dimensions, but you really want to kind of stick with those dimensions, really. And you could go square, 3x3, 4x4. Those will work too.
I've seen people take squares and turn them and make them into like diamond shapes as well.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
you can do whatever your heart desires when you place it on the bottle. Um, I'm starting to. I've one of the companies I go through for labels. They just started doing custom labels, so I can design my label, and if it's some weird gack looking shape, they'll cut it out to that shape for me now.
That's really cool. And what website are you getting your labels printed on?
I do all my labels printed, and my actual bottle caps done at grogtag.com.
Okay. Yeah, GrogTag is long time website out there. If you've listened to any At least for me, if you've listened to any homebrewing podcast like you are today, GrogTag has supported a lot of them, and they've been around for a long time. In no way are they supporting me, but hopefully one day.
They do a great job too.
They do they do a great job.
And what's great about their labels, I mean, I don't want to plug them too much, but what's great is their vinyl labels. So you can peel the label off once the bottle's empty and reuse the labels on another bottle.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and then you don't have to worry about them like getting soggy and gross either.
Yeah, they don't do that, and then you can reuse those bottles as well for anything else, and that's why I love going through them for my beer labels.
Awesome. And then let's say I didn't want to shell out a couple bucks. I think that a grog tag is probably when you price them out, they're usually like $1 or $2 label. Does that seem about right?
Yeah, depending on your amount, of course. With the more that you print, the cheaper it gets. But yeah, it's usually for, I think, 2 dozen. It's like $1 a label.
Yeah, exactly. And let's say I wanted to do something where I was, using things around the house. Like, for example, let's say I, wanted to print one off on my printer. How would you be able to give me some examples of like how I could do that and actually get that to adhere to my bottle?
I mean, it's you can go to any store, Walmart, Target. You can buy already cut labels and send them through your printer that way, where your printer will know the dimensions, and they have the sticky side to them. You're not gonna be able to rip them back off and reuse that label again. But I mean, there's the old home remedy of just using milk on the back of on the back of your label as a adhesive.
Just FYI, if they get a touch of water on them, they're gone. They don't work if you use milk. And milk and water do not mix, at least when it comes to being an adhesive. But it will stick.
It will stick at the start.
It will stick at the start. But it does work.
Yeah, and I mean, you can use water and baking soda as well.
Yeah,
and create a paste out of it.
Yeah, that works too. What would you say is like when you look at your approach to beer labels? And one thing, I will in the show notes here put a link to Kory's Instagram account so that you can see some of the beer labels he's done and how great they are. These are super top notch. This isn't just like, oh hey, he typed letters across it. This is like real nice stuff. So my question is what's your approach to design when you're making a label and like, like if that makes any sense, like what is your artistic approach?
Well, the first thing is always coming up with the name. The name is really the first thing I come up with in the design. Cause once I know what I'm going to name the beer, then I know what area I'm going to go in. It's like, just like on my Instagram, there's the Back to the IPA and One Hop Willie, which are both the IPAs that I've done done so far. Back to the IPA was inspired by Back to the Future, which one of the greatest movies out there. And so that's what really I'm like, well, I'm going to kind of mock the font of it. And okay, then I want it to look like the DeLorean is about to reappear and it has an electrical field around it. So it all depends on where I'm going with the title of it. My next brew I'm actually doing is a dark winter ale, and I'm calling it Blitzen, and it's going to have a drunken reindeer on it.
Yep.
So, it all depends. Yeah, it's key is coming up with the name. The name is.
And me, I hear the word Blitz and I think like a death metal one, but that's because I apparently am into death metal beer right now.
There's some good ones out there.
Yeah, there's definitely some good. It's actually kind of a joke. My brother-in-law is really into death metal, and every time he comes here, we go to a local brewery here that does the these amazing like death metal themed labels, and I actually love the graphic design behind it all. The beer's pretty good. It's not as good as the labels, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. As far as your artistic approach goes, how long do you think you took to actually like learn the software? Like how, like I know that you were already a graphic designer, so when you started making beer, that came after your graphic design kind of chops.
Mhm.
If I were brand new, didn't know what I was doing, trying to learn how to get better at graphic design, what do you think is the learning curve to actually do something that looks really professional?
Um, couple months. I would say 3 to 4 months before you're kind of looking at it, going, "Okay, I can do this," um, and it will look professional. I mean, it's kind of hard. I went to school for it, so I mean,
Yeah,
I did 3 years of art school for graphic design, but they teach you everything you need to know.
yeah.
So, but just to get the general basics down and start having good stuff coming out, I would say 3 to 4 months.
Yeah. And I know that one of the big things of graphic design is like font choice and font theory. What would you say is a good basic kind of rules of thumb when it comes to general graphic design and choosing of fonts and what clashes with what?
You don't want too many fonts in on one label or one design, because they're just gonna all, unless they're really close to each other. It's okay to go with two different fonts that look completely different than each other, because one's going to make one stand out over the other. Um, and in the graphic design world, we always tell people stay away from the font Papyrus and Comic Sans. Those two fonts just need to die, because
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody comes to you no matter what the project is. But I really like this font. Well, that's Papyrus, and I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah. Well, and Papyrus, just as a history for everyone that isn't really super into geeky internet forums where they totally slam it. Papyrus and Comic Sans specifically are like basic fonts you would find on any basic Microsoft machine from the 90s. And they just have kind of continued to go and go and go. And so the idea is that they're just associated with really poor graphic design that you would see like in a small like a small laundry or someone who
Right.
just like wanted to print a poster to hang in the window, right?
Something that goes right on your bulletin board at work saying happy birthday to somebody, or
Exactly.
I'm having a birthday party, come. But there's a great website that I go to for fonts. You can use them free for personal use. You can then, if you went commercial, you can buy a commercial license off the person who creates the font, is dafont.com.
Yeah, I love Default. It's a great one.
They have and they have so many different fonts, and what's nice is you can type in what you want, the name of your beer or whatever word you're using, into a text field, and then hit submit, and it will show you all those fonts,
Yeah.
whatever you typed in the website.
Yeah, and just to be clear on the font thing, for anyone who's listening and not aware, fonts are actually a work of art, right? They're like an image, they're like music, right? If
Oh
somebody's
yeah.
a font designer, it is actually a piece of art for somebody to make this text in a shape, in a certain way, and so if you were to have a specific font that you wanted or a font that you wanted to replicate, you could actually always Google it. You could end up on a website, and some fonts out there are hundreds of dollars. They can be very expensive. And so the idea about like a website like the font, think of it as like a royalty free website for music. And so the idea is that, or stock photos or something like that, and they kind of have a license that says, "Hey, you can use all these fonts just as long as you're not making money from them." That's usually the case.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah. Exactly.
another,
That's
yeah,
exactly how they work.
another place I like to find fonts are like Google fonts, right? because obviously those fonts tend to be as well, easy to use and open.
And what's nice too is if when you get into using the Adobe softwares, they have their own font kit called Type Kit, and there's I think 1,500 fonts that are included just through Adobe that you can't get anywhere else. So
Yeah.
they're trying to take over that market as well.
Yeah, Typekit's pretty extensive, and the cool thing is that even then, those fonts are, like you said, you can't find them anywhere else. And then, there's probably people who get close, but it's never exactly the same thing.
Right, and what's great about those fonts too is they, because of their software, Dreamweaver, Typekit, you can actually export those bundles, so you can use them on a website. So if you made a bottle of beer and you created a website with it as well, you can have that font on your website as well.
Exactly, and the one thing is that if you use a font from DeFont, it's really hard to do it at. Though Google Fonts, those fonts are easy to actually import into the CSS of a website as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, Usually with Google Fonts, all you have to do is type in an API call out, even in the header of your website, and it will have every Google font. You just have to call it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like those companies and what they've done with fonts has been pretty amazing over the years. Just because I've at some point done some really poor graphic design in my history, and it used to be very, very difficult to get a font and very, very expensive.
There used to never be any of these royalty free for personal use kind of sites. If you wanted to use that font, you were going to pay for it.
Exactly.
I don't care if you had a business or not.
Yeah, I want to be the guy who invented Helvetica.
Yeah.
I don't think that one's worth very much money anymore.
Oh, I think it still goes for like $40 if you don't have it.
Really? That's crazy. I mean, everything your computer comes with Helvetica now, but
yeah, it does.
Still crazy.
But yeah, I think it's still $40 if for non-commercial use.
Yeah, so let's say I'm not super artistic, right? Let's say, because Illustrator has lots of drawing and lines and those kinds of things. That I know that seems to be your main platform. What would you say is like a good approach for somebody who's not super artistic, wants to get something that looks great and could ramp up quickly? Like, what would you say is a good approach that way?
Finding images. I mean, you can Google anything nowadays and find an image for it. Just make sure. I mean, if it's for personal use, you can use it. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, if you're not making money from it, it's pretty much you're fine.
Yeah. And there's plenty of stuff out there that you can do. A lot of times when I'm kind of having writer's cramp, or I don't know what we call it in the graphic world, designer's block.
Yeah, let's go with designer's block.
There's a lot of times I go do a Google and do a search on, okay, this is the kind of style I want. This is the beer I'm brewing, the style of beer I'm brewing, and I'll look at other companies' labels and be like, oh, they did a really good job on that, or okay, yeah, I want to do something like that, but I don't want to copy them. So there's a lot of creativity, even if you don't have that. You can doodle on a piece of paper first, and that a lot of times that brings a lot of ideas out for me. Is I'll just grab a pen and just start scribbling, and it's not even what I want it to look like. Usually half the time it's completely different from what I scribbled out.
Yeah, because it just gets you started, right?
Yeah, it just gets those juices flowing, and once you actually start zoning in, it just starts happening naturally. And I've been talking to friends on the phone. They're like, "Oh, you should name your beer this," and then if I'm really into that name, I'll put a design and email it and send pictures to my buddies within 20 minutes. Be like, this is it. Like the on my Instagram, I have the "You'll Shoot Your Rye Out" kid, and
I love that movie, by the way.
oh, I do too. I don't know how my girlfriend hates it.
What?
Okay, she says she does it.
That is
She's
grounds
sitting
for...
right next to me right now, and she says I don't hate it. She's just never sat through the whole movie.
That's a staple in our house. And for anyone who doesn't know, we're talking about A Christmas Story, which is a classic.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And my friend's like, "Oh, you should do a Christmas brew and do it, mock the name somehow." And if you notice, on 3 of my labels now are all 80s movie influence. You have Back to the Future, Goonies, and then You'll Shoot Your Rye Out Kid with A Christmas Story. But yeah, he's like, I sat there. I'm like, okay, what am I going to call it? And so my friend actually came up with the name, and I'm like, that's perfect. That is really good. And we're actually going to do a rye saison from it.
Some of my favorite saisons are right. Actually, my personal favorite saison I've ever made was actually a chocolate rice saison that turned out amazing.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
And he texted me the name. He's like, you should do a design for that. I'm like, all right, yeah, let me think about it. And within 20 minutes, I was texting him back. But the idea that it came to me, and like, you'll shoot your eye out. All right, let's just do a picture. And it's simple. It's just a picture of a pair of glasses with some cracks in it where the Red Ryder BB gun shot him. So, I mean, you don't have to go extravagant with a label. Sometimes the simplest is the best.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of simplicity. I did a label this year personally that was very, very loud. It was my take on the King Sue label with the from Toppling Goliath with the giant Tyrannosaurus. Mine was called T Haze the Juice Hunter. And it was a hazy IPA, and actually the label turned out a lot better than the beer, but it was super loud, lots of colors, but the cool thing is I got a lot of I used a lot of like clip art that I got from some like open clip art repositories, and that's always a great place if you're looking for like cartoon characters and things like that.
Yeah, I didn't even think of clip art. I mean, there's so much stuff out there that you can grab and use on your own personally. You don't have to buy it. So, I mean, that's what's great. You can find anything you want out there.
So might be with the label. I'm going to ask you this question. Do you start with the label first and then go to the beer, or do you do the beer and then the label?
Sometimes it's either one. Sometimes it's the label. Sometimes it's the beer first. So far it's been, I would say more of it has been label first. I get the idea from the label, and then it helps me plan on what style I'm going to make. Like I have my favorite one I've brewed so far is the Manic Mocha, which was an Imperial Mocha Stout. I really like Imperials. I like that deep flavor that they really do. But it was chocolate, milk, coffee, all in the same beer, and it brewed at its final ABV was 12.1%, and
nice.
You could not even taste the alcohol. Everybody was just sitting there going, "Are you sure there's alcohol in here?" I'm like, "There is. There's a lot of it."
Yeah. And then you drink an entire bottle of it, and you realize there is a lot of it in there.
I made the mistake of one night not thinking about it, drank 3 of them in about 30 minutes, and
oh man, that's a rough morning.
I was stuck on the couch.
Yeah, that is a rough morning.
But like my brother, one of my brothers just got married about a month ago, and for one of his wedding gift from me, I wanted to brew his favorite style of beer. Um, and I asked him what his favorite style was, and he's like, "Oh, I really like pilsners and I like stouts." I'm like, wow, you're on two different sides of the rainbow there. Usually, you're either a dark beer lover or you're the lighter beer lover. Um, but I'm like, well, I don't have enough time to do a stout for you, so you're getting a pilsner. But I ended up making a honey pilsner, and like that beer came first before the label. And it just all depends. Sometimes if I'm making it for somebody, then it's whatever their style that they enjoy, and then the label comes after. But usually, if I'm creating it, I'm sitting at my computer, I create a label, and then usually 2 to 3 weeks later, I start brewing it.
Yeah. And to be honest, like this is as much of an art as brewing can be. And you know, I think it's definitely like an approach. I like me personally, I just make beer and then the name of the beer comes second. That's just usually my style. And so you know, and a lot of the times I don't even name them. I just am like, this is brown beer, you know, or whatever.
This is beer. Just drink it.
Yeah, it's just beer. Drink it. And what is it? It's a saison, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally understand. Sometimes sometimes I'll sit at the computer and I'm having designer's block, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna brew it. I don't think I'm gonna name it. And then the next day I'll sit back at my computer and then I'll have the design done.
Exactly.
It's just it's hit or miss. I mean, it can get frustrating with graphic design. I mean, even without designing beer labels, um, like I've been working the company I work for. We do water treatment, and so we sell ROs and reverse osmosis systems. So it's like I would not tell anybody else if they make homebrew, do not use any other water but our reverse osmosis water. But coming up with designs there, it's like, well, how much can you really do for water treatment? There's not much to it. So that you get frustrated at work, and then you'll have a idea at home for a beer label, and then I'll go the next day back at work and be like, okay, yeah, I can whip this design out. No problem. So
That's awesome.
it kind of plays on each other. Sometimes
Yeah.
I drink my beer while making labels,
Yep.
and so
I,
then
I
that helps.
yeah, totally. And to go back to the reverse osmosis thing, um, you live in Phoenix. I mean, how is the tap water there?
Horrible. It smells like a swimming pool coming out of your faucet.
Oh man, that yeah. So I live in Denver, Colorado. I actually live very close to Golden, which is obviously where Coors is. Um, and and actually my water source I think is either the same or similar to theirs. And people are always like, oh man, our water here is great, makes great beer. And I still use distilled water to make my beer, and then just build the salts from there. So yeah, I'm totally I'm a water geek, and one day I'm going to actually have an RO system and then just go from there. But yeah, every time I brew a batch, I buy 10 gallons of distilled and start there.
Oh, yeah, that's the same thing. I mean, if I don't have an RO in my home right now. Don't tell my boss, but I
don't. He'd be very upset.
Yeah, that's he'd awesome. Probably send somebody over and be like, "We're putting one in right now."
We have him listen to the podcast. Maybe he'll do that.
But I mean, I go to the store and I just buy purified water. I mean, our water is so hard down here as well, so we have a lot of calcium and magnesium in our water.
Yep.
And it just throws off the taste of the beer. The first batch I ever brewed, I just used our tap water. And everybody was like, "Oh, it's so good. This is so good." I'm like,
Yep.
Really? But
I lived in Utah, and we had the same issue where next to the Great Salt Lake we had super hard water, and it was heavily with copper, magnesium, and it had a lot of just a lot of alkaline in it, and so it was so hard. Like you would boil water and it would be like there would be salt in it.
oh, yeah, and
Yeah.
and you just don't want that in your beer.
No, man. But
You
you know
don't
what?
want
It
that
made a
at all.
great stout. Like it would make a great like porter or stouts were great there because hard water and stouts and porters go really well together. But like if you tried to brew an IPA, it just had this like astringent flavor, and it was all driven by water. Yeah. So, what if you were to say like right now you're brewing in a bag, you're making these really cool labels. What's your next upgrade on your brewing system? What would you say like 6 months from now? Where do you want to be?
I actually want to go 3 kettle, and right now I use a mini fridge for my fermentation, so I can control temperature and everything. But then I want to with the fridge, I want to have full size fridge and 2 mini fridges with it, just so I can have more batches going at once. Because it's just I want more beer,
Yeah,
and my
absolutely.
my friends want more beer, and it's so sad when I finish a brew, bottled it, and it's all ready to be drank, and I start handing out beers, and I look at my amount for myself, and I'm like, wow, I only have 5, 6 left for me. How's this work? You guys?
That's why I keg it.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys aren't paying for this. I am.
Exactly. Well, and kind of the idea for me is that like, to be honest, when you're making 5-10 gallon batches of beer, it's let's be honest, it's not healthy to drink that much beer too quickly, right? You want to take it time and drink it slowly. And to be honest, if you have friends that are drinking it with you, it helps you so that you can get through beer, not overdo it all the time. And then you're also continually brewing, because to me, brewing is as much fun as the drinking part. And so at least that's my approach.
We're half the time we're piss ass drunk halfway through the brewing process.
Yeah.
Because we're all drinking while I'm brewing. So
yeah, I used to, and now I'm like I'm a 1 pint a batch guy when I'm brewing, just because I've screwed up a couple batches in my early days, and I was like, no more.
That's one thing I'm proud of right now is I have not had a bad batch yet.
Oh, it'll happen. Trust
I'm
me,
waiting
you'll
for
have
it
a
to
dumper.
happen. Oh, I'm waiting.
It happens.
I know it's going to happen, but
yeah,
I'm still impressed.
I've done a few batches, like it's just like every now. But the thing to me is, if you have bad beer, like life is too short to drink bad beer. Dump the batch.
And just make another one.
It's not worth it. Yeah, exactly. I have a lot of buddies that just cannot dump a batch, and you're just like, dude, this is so infected. Please don't let me drink this beer. Like,
no, and my friends call me the beer snob of the group, because if the 6-pack costs less than $9.99, I'm not drinking it.
that you're going straight on a price cartel. I like it. So going to a 3-vessel system, you've already got a fermentation chamber, you're well on your way, man. That's super exciting, and look forward to seeing where you are brewing in the next year, because obviously you're on your 1-year anniversary. I can't wait to see the labels, the beer you're brewing, and what your system looks like in a year.
I'm excited. It's brewing these smaller batches. It's just not doing it anymore.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Kory, thank you so much for coming on my show. I can't wait to discuss this topic with all of our listeners, and thank you so much for being on Homebrewing DIY.
Thank you again. This was a really good time. So, if you're any of your if they have any questions that you can't answer that are more towards me, you can always reach out to me, and I can answer the questions for them.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll make sure I leave your Instagram information so that people can check out your really cool labels, and I'll make sure I link to that from the show notes. So check it out.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Kory.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Kory for taking the time to talk to us today. If you head over to our website, homebrewingdiy.beer, you can get detailed show notes, and I'll add some photos of his labels there. I'll also add a link to his Instagram account, so you should check it out. And remember to send your homebrew hacks to the email podcast@homebrewingdiy.beer. We look forward to reading them on the air. Well, thanks for listening. See you in 2 weeks on Homebrewing DIY.